Thank you, students, for coming in so nicely this morning. This is an exciting day. I know there's lots of energy. We're going to have some pictures that'll be playing throughout so that you can see them. I want you to be thinking, wondering, coming up with great questions, looking at to see, can you see yourself doing this in the future? Today is an exciting day. It's not every day that we get to have a researcher, a scientist, an author, someone that does amazing things from Springfield, Illinois, here to talk with you guys about the amazing things that she's doing to help our world, to look at critical issues that are facing us and coming up with solutions. Students, these are things that we talk to you about each and every day, and I know sometimes you just look at us and you think, oh, they just want us to do a project. We're not just doing a project. We're trying to give you skills that as you grow and you go to high school and you go to college, that you have the skills to do anything that you want, try anything you want. This is a safe place in middle school. You can try things. If it doesn't work, it was a try. That's okay. Sometimes we have to fail a lot to come up with some really amazing successes. So today's an exciting day. I'm going to talk to you a little bit more about our wonderful visitors that we have, not just our researcher, but her family, and how working together collaboratively, they have done amazing things as an entire family. Everyone's kind of had a role in that. But thank you for being here. I would like to welcome our district, our mayor that's here, our media that's here. Thank you so much for coming and being a part of this special day. And thank you again to your family for sharing your knowledge with us, not just here in our gymnasium, but throughout the day in our science classes, because that's where it all begins. So students, I want to share with you a little bit, I've talked to you a little bit about our friends that are here and our families are here, but I want you to listen to the amazing things that she's already accomplished. So Dr. Siobhan Malany received her doctorate in organic chemistry from the University of Iowa. She trained in pharmacology at the University of California, San Diego, studied proteins that involved neuromuscular transmission. She explained her works to Max Planck Institute for Brain Research in Germany. So already, quite things we talk to you every day about high school and college, so start to be listening to some of these things. See if you can see yourself in these places. For the last 8 years, she has been the director of translational biology for Sanford Burnham Presby Medical Discovery Institute in Orlando, Florida, and recently became an associate professor in the College of Pharmacy at the University of Florida. She became interested in space during her time in Florida, and with the funding from Space Florida and the Center of Advancement for Science and Space, it's also known as CASIS, and part of NASA, founded MicroGRX, a company that focuses, and this is really cool, lab-on-a-chip technology to study the effects of microgravity, including accelerated muscle wasting. She's currently doing an experiment, and you'll hear a little bit more about that today, and sharing her information to the International Space System on Cygnus NG10, muscle cell isolation from muscle biopsies from 8 volunteers through collaboration with Florida Hospital. So that's amazing. So they took this research, they put it together in this lab, and then they're sending out there to see what those effects are. This experiment really looks at changing cells in microgravity using an automated lab-on-a-chip technology, and she's also deployed 3 other experiments to the International Space Station and has funding for 2 more. So it's exciting. Maybe you can collaborate. Maybe those 2 more will involve all of you guys. This is exciting because she came here from Springfield. She had a passion and she pursued it. She didn't let anyone get in her way. But it all started with encouragement from a teacher. So sometimes I know through that productive struggle, you're like, what are you guys making me do? That productive struggle pushes you through. Listen to your teachers, listen to people that are around you, listen to that encouragement. If there's negativity, push that away. There's not anything you guys can achieve. We would also like to recognize a few of her family members that are here. It was truly a family collaborative event. Her brother, Lee Malany, is here, and if you could stand up and just kind of wave. Okay, so he is has an engineering degree in mechanics from Southern Illinois University in Carbondale. I know several of you have researched that school in your college project. He started his career as an engineer at the Kennedy Space Center, working on the space shuttle. He is currently an aerospace consultant with a company that's in El Segundo, California. Did I say that correctly? I think we just partnered with a school from there just the other day, which is kind of exciting. He's previously the chief designer at the launch site at Wallops Flight Facility in Virginia, and during that original construction, as part of her team, he's helped prepare the last experiment for launch, so that was exciting. So to have an engineer working on rockets and science and all of that together, which is amazing. Her wonderful family is here, if you'll stand up if you're part of her family. Parents, children, spouse back there helping with all of the media, her niece, family. We're excited that she's from Springfield, but we're also excited because she's part of the Lincoln Magnet School family as Mia and Austin's aunt, so that's extra special for us. So lots of great. So thank you, Mia, for bringing your family here, and Austin, who's studying for finals at Springfield High. So we'll give him a shout out because he loves those shout outs. Yeah, Southeast. You guys are Springfield. He's at Southeast, doing great things there. So we want to say thank you, and to her parents for always encouraging her and getting her to where she is. Thank you again for being here. This is an exciting day. So students, as you hear more about these amazing things, again, just try to think of yourself. You guys are tackling problems each and every day, whether we're tackling critical issues with plastic, or migration, or we're looking at our social issues and how can we make a change, and be forward thinking, be thinking about all of those things. Thinking. That's what we want you guys to always do. We want you to be focusing on inquiry all the time. So we're excited. At this time, I would like to invite Mayor Langfelder forward to offer this proclamation and this special day.
Thank you very much. This is one of the best parts of my job, is because we get to recognize our greatest asset of Springfield, which is our people. And it's all about families in Springfield. That's how we grew. It started with really the one that set us on the map, of course, is Abraham Lincoln. And everybody knows Abraham Lincoln. He brings world visitors around here and around the country. And what's important is Abraham Lincoln never forgot where he came from, as Siobhan never forgot where she came from. And really the roots start with the family. Her parents, I know Barb and Lee Malany for a long time. Lee does great work around the globe, but it's that quiet leadership, it's that humble leadership. They are doing it not for them, and Siobhan's kind of probably embarrassed right now because she always said it's not about me, it's about us. And that's what it's about. How do we make our community better, our country better, and our world better? And that's what we're recognizing, is the contributions of people that come from Springfield, that get the support from family and friends and the schools, the teachers, very important, because they kind of guide us along the way, along with our parents. So I can't echo your principal's words enough. But it gives me great pride to give this presentation to her. And if Siobhan, if you'd come forward, please.
Yes.
And the proclamation reads, whereas the city of Springfield is a remarkable community due to the individuals who call this place home, and for their efforts, challenges, and initiatives that they take on throughout their lives, and whereas today we gather to recognize the accomplishments of one of these individuals, Springfield native Dr. Siobhan Malany, the daughter of Lee Grand and Barb Malany, and sister to Carlene Hinkle and Lee Malany. And whereas Dr. Malany's interest in science began with her father's work, but she credits her career path to Mrs. Mary Jackson, her Springfield High School science teacher, who urged her to pursue chemistry. And whereas despite this area of study not common for women, Mrs. Jackson urged Siobhan to pursue chemistry as a career and served as motivation and inspiration to her throughout her journey. Siobhan went on to major in chemistry at Augustana College and earned her doctorate in organic chemistry at the University of Iowa. And whereas Dr. Siobhan Malany's career has been lauded with numerous achievements, including this past November when a rocket blasted off from NASA's Wallops Flight Facility in Virginia, carrying her scientific experiment to the International Space Station. And whereas this journey is the first time scientists will test muscle cells individually in space with the goal to test how healthy cells can accelerate growth by zero gravity. This cell research will have a broader application, including finding treatments for age-related muscle loss due to illness and immobility. And whereas Dr. Malany has deployed 3 experiments to the International Space Station and has received funding for 2 more deployments, And whereas we laud Dr. Malany for her accomplishments and breakthroughs, we also celebrate her breaking down barriers for females in her profession, proving that the only limits we face are what we put on ourselves. She has truly shown all of us that when you reach for the stars, one day you will get there. Now therefore, I, James O. Langfeld, Mayor of the City of Springfield, Illinois, together with the City Council and residents, do hereby proclaim that Friday, December 14th, 2018, shall be Dr. Siobhan Malany Day in the City of Springfield, and call upon all citizens to formally recognize Dr. Malany for her accomplishments and acknowledge that through the support of mentorship of our young people, especially females, today our future will be bright. Congratulations. And I do have one more special gift. And we'd like to give this to our special residents that have accomplished a lot and individuals that bring us greetings from afar. And it's Abraham Lincoln, and it has on there my favorite quote from Abraham Lincoln, because he said it best, and his words live on today as they did back when he walked the earth. And it says, "Government of the people, by the people, for the people, shall not perish from the earth." And that means you work on behalf of others, and that's what Dr. Malany has done, and we can't thank her enough for her great accomplishments to help all of us live better lives for tomorrow.
Thank you so much.
Can I get a picture of you guys?
And then one last item. We do, for everybody in attendance, I have a wristband that it has Abraham Lincoln on it. On it, it says, "What is your legacy?" So just like Dr. Malany set her own legacy and her family set their own legacy, each one of us have a career path in life to help others. And so as you exit, we'll give you that bracelet, and you can think about Dr. Malany and what her great legacy is, Abraham Lincoln, what his great legacy is, and how you're going to challenge yourself to help others in your life and set your own legacy for the future.
Well, I have something for you as well. So every rocket launch, and there's a lot of rocket launches going on, but every rocket launch has their own patch. So I have an NG10 patch, and I wanted to, as all of you get your patches in the future with your experiments going to space, you can add to it. So here's
Nice.
an NG10 patch for you.
Thank you. That's great.
So I want to thank you for inviting me here to your school. It's really, this is the fun part. The science can be hard, it can be challenging, and this is fun to share it with all of you and inspire you to continue to do science and do engineering, technology, whatever your passions are. I didn't think about going to space. It just happened out of a conversation when I was at a shuttle launch in 2011. I was there watching the Endeavor's last voyage and met a teacher, a physics teacher, that had students sending experiments. There are student experiments that go to space, and he encouraged me to look into it and learn more. And my first launch was through a competition that I entered. It had no budget and no funding, but we had to find something to put into a box, and it would go to the space station. It was a very simple experiment, just looking at the proteins in plates and reading them up on the space station. And that was the first introduction. And then I got some real funding to do some science. So do you know, so let's start with an interesting fact. Do you know that for the last 18 years, continuously, we have had humans outside of the Earth. So that means that they've been where? They've been on the space station, which is this rotating lab that orbits our lower Earth orbit, about 16 rotations every day. So astronauts see 16 sunrises and 16 sunsets, and it is a research lab, an international research laboratory. It was formed almost 20 years ago with a treaty from the Russian Federation, United States, Canada, and Japan. So, and it's international. A lot of experiments take place on that. So we've been off the Earth continuously for 18 years. So what does that really tell us about ourselves? Is that we're explorers? We're going to continue being explorers? even after the space station as we know it may retire, there's already plans to make other space stations and find other ways to do experiments in space. And one of the big things is about going to Mars. So NASA is really interested in exploring Mars, and there's a lot of interesting experiments going on, and you guys are the generation that will go to Mars. You're going to be doing something related to Mars in your adulthood. So that is really exciting. And I'm actually working for you because the experiments that I'm doing in life science are to benefit your travels and in your exploration in Mars and looking how to be healthy. Because certainly if you're going to go to Mars, you want to know, what are you going to wear? And I'm talking about skinny jeans. So what space suit is going to take you there and withstand the environment of space and radiation? What are you going to eat? So there's a lot of experiments about plant growth and vegetation, about how to use fluids, how to create CO2 environments and oxygen. So a lot of experiments around how to live. How are you going to get tools? There's 3D printers on the space station that can make you a wrench or a screwdriver when yours floats away. How to recycle materials. So all of this is taking place now, and there's a lot of opportunities to send experiments to the space station. And mine was actually looking at muscle growth, because our astronauts, while they're up there, really experience quite a harsh environment. So they have challenges, their bones degrade faster, their muscles get weaker faster, they have their eyesight is affected, their sleep patterns are affected, they have immune issues, there's different microbes and bacteria, and so all of this is very interesting to study. When our astronauts come back to the ground, to Earth, a lot of these things are reversible. They get their strength back, they get stronger, but it's really interesting about what happens on the space station and how you can use that to understand what happens during that time, because there's this accelerated changes. So think about studying something that occurs faster that you can look at that might be like age-related muscle weakness or age-related problems that occur, and how you can use that to study diseases that might take a very long time to study on the ground. But it's not also about health. There's manufacturing that's being done there. There's a group that looks at eye implants for blindness, because the implants actually grow more homogeneous. They're actually better when formed in the environment of microgravity, because there's not this pull in one direction. You know, when you're in gravity and you have a balloon, that balloon, it falls toward the ground, but in microgravity it's going to hover, and you get better formation of things like crystals growing that can tell us about diseases, and these different implants that can help us design better tools for a number of different things. And there's a lot of student projects also that are being done up there in terms of looking at how to sequence DNA, tell us about illness, tell us about different microbes, and plant growth, and lots of opportunities and competitions for students, middle school to high school. So I encourage you to look into it and look at Genes in Space, the ISS, and other websites that have a lot of information, and I'm happy to leave some of that information. So with that, in explaining some of the great things that we can do in space that benefits not only space travel, but also health and on space, and how we can have better environments, and how we can predict weather changes and disasters. All of that is because we do this experiment in space. So it's really exciting, and it takes a whole team of people. It's not just about the science. It's about fitting things in, using mechanics to feed our cells. It's using computer science to communicate with the box that's up there. And you actually can see, that's actually in the vehicle. Goes, puts into a power locker, puts into the vehicle. There's an astronaut that can move that box to the power locker to a freezer, and the cells actually come back to us in January on the SpaceX Dragon, and then we'll do experiments on those cells, and we'll compare them to cells that we've looked at on the ground. And so we'll get our control experiment and be able to look at how cells change in microgravity and how that affects muscle weakness and muscle disease. So a lot of very, very interesting things that can be done. So, with that, I really want to thank you for inviting me. It's a great day. I'm going to talk to some of the science classes today, and it's all about STEM and science and technology, engineering and math. And one of the great things with having my brother on board was that he had aerospace engineering and could really help me talk with other engineers about how to put this experiment together, all of the pieces intersecting to get this experiment to the space station, working with NASA, working with safety regulations, and with other engineers and rocket specialists to really get this together. And it takes a lot of coordination, and so Lee was there at Wallops with me, helping me coordinate this experiment. And we didn't get everything right the first time, but it's like running a race. You're never going to know how you're going to perform and how you're going to get there until you do it for the first time. You understand what it is, that the mistakes that you made or the things you need to do better. And what's nice is we have a chance to go back on different launches and ask continued questions and make our experiment better, look at more samples, ask more questions, and do more science, and figure out how to benefit health on Earth and help astronauts and help you guys get to Mars and be healthy and be successful in your exploration in the future. So, thank you. Sure, if they have questions.
So students, be thinking about your challenge-based learning groups. She talked about teamwork and working together and looking at strengths, and we do that often in our CBL units. So really be thinking about that. Does anyone have, we can take a few questions in here. I know we're going to be doing a lot of those with 6th grade in class, but does anyone have any questions you can think of right away?
Hi, my name is Terry.
Hi, Terry.
And my question is, how do you get what you send to space to the station?
How does it get there?
Yeah.
It's a great question, how it gets there and how it gets back. So again, we work with a lot of different groups, and we do the science. Our Shoebox Experiment has everything we need. It runs through a program, it feeds the cells its nutrients, it has the right environment, it has a camera and a microscope that visualizes the cells while they're in orbit. That actually goes into, it's all contained in a box, it goes into a locker system, and that gets plugged in, it gives it power to the experiment, and it gets plugged into the vehicle. And you see some of those pictures, and these are big, our shoebox goes into a bigger box, that goes in the vehicle, gets locked down, and you saw the launch. I hope my cells actually survive that launch. It's pretty extreme. And it docks at the space station. The astronauts actually move those experiments. There are about 2,000 pounds of space experiments that went up on the last SpaceX launch. It's a lot of just science. About 5,000 pounds of supplies and hardware and everything. 2,000 of it was just scientific experimentation. They've even sent mice up there to study bone weakness and other diseases. But the astronauts have to move that into the space station. There's tools on the space station that run experiments, and then it gets loaded back into what's called the Dragon on SpaceX, which is a capsule that actually returns to the Earth, to the ocean, comes to land, and FedEx sends it to our lab.
Neat, huh? How long will it be on the space station?
Yeah, so in this one, our cells only really live for so long. So the experiment was about a week. So when we had a launch delay, which happens, and there's nothing you can do about it because of weather, and you know it cut into our time in microgravity. But we stopped the experiment after about a week. We add a reagent, preserves the genetic material that we'll look at. It goes into a freezer system, and so right now it's just in a freezer called the Polar, and it will stay there until January 19th, and it comes back. So some experiments can run longer. It's just we need a ride home, and we have to wait for the Dragon to come back. But the experiment's over right now, and it's just sitting in the freezer, waiting to be retrieved and come back.
One more question. Trying to go.
Oh, the difference between NASA and SpaceX. So NASA is the entity that was funding all of the shuttle programs and has stopped doing that and made it commercial. And so in doing that, it's led to other companies like SpaceX that are making rockets and launching rockets. Northrop Grumman was the one that we went on. But NASA is still involved in space exploration. NASA's putting a lot of funding in going to Mars, whereas a lot of the others are looking at satellite deployments, manufacturing things in space, a lot of satellite stuff going on, and making rockets and vehicles, and looking at replacement for the space station, because in about 10 years, the space station will probably be decommissioned. And so there will be maybe smaller space stations, but more of them. So there's a lot of companies that are now really competing to have rockets and have the ability to take people, experiments, hardware, a lot of stuff back up to it. So NASA is a federal funding agency. SpaceX is a private company making rockets.
Okay. I will probably have them go, and then we'll head to science class if that's okay.
Okay.
Does that sound good?
Yeah, unless you have time. Oh,
Okay. And so I think we will, well, you think we can do one more?
Sure. One more.
Last one. So we are last one. But we do want to get to our science class. I'm trying to get a different areas.
How many people are on the space station? I think it's 4 or 5 from different countries, but not. I mean, it's a big space station, but not terribly large. And of course, they have a lot of tools and experiments, and I'm sure it gets quite crowded on the space station. So one of the things on our experiment is we don't use a lot of astronaut time. That's really important. All of ours is an automated system. And so, because you can imagine that astronauts are extremely busy, their day is very scheduled in terms of all the experiments they might have to run, as well as go outside and do hardware and repairs and surveying from the space station itself. So the more of these lab-on-a-chips that we can do, we get more information because they're just housed up there. The experiment's running on its own, you get it back. And we can do a lot of these experiments and look at different tissues and how they grow, and all of these are coming up in the next few launches, which is called tissue chips in space. If you look up tissue chips in space, you'll get some information of the new experiments that are going to the space station.
All right, thank you. All right, let's give her a round of applause.